My boyfriend 32M and I 32F are not on the same page about having kids. I want kids 1 to 2 sometime in the future. My boyfriend of 3Y doesn't. We've talked about this several times, but never reached a conclusion. His view is that after having kids you no longer exist as a person, your needs no longer matter. I'm not saying having kids is easy and that it doesn't require sacrifice, but I have enough love to offer for a partner and kids. Have you gone through something similar? Did you want kids and your partner didn't, or vice versa? What happened in the end? Did you break up or compromise? There's no compromise on this one. You can't have half a kid. You have to decide if that's a deal breaker, and if so, move on. If you are both set on this, you wanting them and him not, this can only end in one of two ways. 1. He gives because he doesn't want to lose you, so he has kids he never wanted. It shows in how he raises them, and it may even make him leave after the birth because the stress gets to him. 2. You never have kids and resent him for it, believing he ruined your life. TLDR, if you are not on the same page for kids, it's time to go your separate ways and find someone who is on the same page. My mother wanted children. My father did not. I'll spare you the details, but my dad was not a very good father. He was a good guy, and all his buddies and coworkers thought highly of him. But that's not much consolation for a little boy who desperately needs his father's love and attention. So ask yourself, what kind of father do my children deserve? I was once with a partner who had a different view on kids and neither wanted to give. We are no longer together because that is literally the ONL solution here. And also why I bring it up very early. His view is that after having kids you no longer exist as a person, your needs no longer matter. He's not wrong. Too many people's relationship goes downhill once they have kids. All of your needs go on the back burner once you have kids. You can't do whatever you want whenever you want to do it. Unfortunately, there's no compromise for something like this. Either he'll resent you for having children or you'll resent him for not having children. I ask about things like wanting kids before or on the first date because there are a few things that simply cannot be compromised on, and kids are one of the biggest ones. I suggest that when you start dating after this relationship you have this discussion way earlier than years in. I don't want kids, my partner did not. We are no longer together. It's a deal breaker. It's impossible to meet in the middle on this. It's not like he is afraid of not getting you love. He just doesn't want to spend every waking second caring for another human being, and I totally get that. Nothing is gonna help. It's better to break up sooner than later. I'm CF and it's a deal breaker for me, so if we are not on the same page it will go nowhere and better to break off as soon as possible. If you search this topic on this subreddit, very rarely if ever does it end well. A doesn't want kids, B does they end up having them, and a resents B and the kids divorce follows. They never have kids, a now resents B. These all have their own branching paths as well, like cheating, poking holes in condoms, etc. I have never seen it end well. I'm 27, my husband is 28, we started dating when we were 18 and I told him back then I don't want kids. Here we are almost a decade together and he knows I still don't want kids, and at this point neither does he. If either of us change our mind we've vowed to tell one another, but right now we're happy with our puppy. But I've known since middle school I don't want kids, and if my partner wants them we aren't going to work. This is a fundamental point of compatibility that I thought everybody knew. Of course you break up as soon as you find out this information. What is the point of continuing the relationship? Especially since you are the one who wants kids and is on a time clock. Successful life planning 101. Leave. There is nothing more to discuss or negotiate or say. 3 years is long enough. If he wants kids, he'll come after you and commit to having a family. 3 years is a long time to waste your eggs on him faffing around. If he doesn't want kids, you'll have cut your losses. You have to be practical here because otherwise he's just wasting your precious time. I've been in this situation and it was miserable. We broke up. A year later I met my now husband who wanted kids just as much as me. Staying with the ex would have been a terrible mistake. You cannot successfully negotiate a solution when one partner wants kids and the other doesn't. If you did get pregnant, he likely would be a resentful, crappy dad. Is that what you want for your future kids? It's not too late for you at 32, but the clock is ticking. Move on. Good luck. Leave. You're not getting any younger and it may end up being harder on you to conceive. This man definitely doesn't want kids and that won't change. You need to find a life partner that wants kids. There's no compromise when it comes to kids. You either want them or you don't, and if you're not willing to consider not having kids as much as he's not willing to have kids, then there's really nothing else to say. Time for both of y'all to move on and find more compatible partners. This is an absolute deal breaker. Break up. You can't compromise on this one. At your age you really should know this. If you don't agree on if you want kids or not, your relationship is not going to work. Seriously though, if you break up neutrally you guys could still be friends instead. Otherwise you are just going to resent each other and it will just collapse. This is usually a deal breaker, unfortunately. And biologically you may be on limited time. If you don't have kids, you may live to regret it, especially once you are in later years and perhaps he is no longer there and you are alone. At the very least, there will be latent resentment. Similar situation, broke up. As much as it hurts, this is one of those things you can't find a middle ground in. Find a boyfriend who wants kids. It's sad but there's no compromise. You'll either resent your boyfriend for not having them or he'll resent you if you do have them. I would say the two of you need to realize there is no compromise on this. A kid isn't like compromising on a holiday or sofa. If you can't reach an agreement, I think maybe you need to look at if your future is with each other. If a kid is a deal breaker, then it's probably for the best. It will hurt but it's better than regret and resenting. Agree with other comments on discussing this early on in the relationship. I was in a similar situation but with marriage. My ex used to imply he would have gotten married to his ex and I assumed marriage was on the table for our relationship. Forward 2.5 years when we discussed our future he said he didn't believe in marriage anymore. Turns out we were both hoping the other will change their mind but that doesn't really happen. Broke up with him shortly after. Unfortunately there is no compromise. I do think if he loves you enough to have kids with you he will love them too, but he has to decide if he wants that. You are wasting each other's time. You should have ended this already instead of wasting 3 years by just kick 8 nanograms the problem down the road. He's over-exaggerating what it means to become a parent. I have 2 sons, 15 and 10, and I never lost my autonomy or my individual life goals. Of course, my priorities shifted and I have sacrificed a lot of personal time and money to enhance my children's lives, but that was the plan from the start. Whether he's blowing it out of proportion intentionally or out of ignorance, you should not have kids with him. He's the type of person who would let it turn into resentment towards you, and possibly the kids themselves. There is no compromise on this one. Either he 100% wants kids or your relationship is 100% over. To be honest, this is not something you can push someone into. If your boyfriend doesn't want kids and you do, it just isn't going to work. There is no way to have part of a kid. I have heard this story from many different points on child-free. I am child-free myself, and the child-free person, fence-sitter that is pulled into it, convinced to do it, is often so miserable. There is no undo button for having a child. It's not like a puppy or kitten which you can bring back to the shelter if you realize pet ownership is not for you. To be honest, it's either you stop wanting kids or you two end up breaking up over this. The resulting, for the kids, relationships, marriages are not often pretty and will make both of you miserable. Only go in on having kids if you are both 100,000% on board. Unfortunately, I think all the comments saying this isn't going to work long-term are correct. Having kids should be a choice you make because you want them, not the default, or something you do because your partner wants them. If you force the issue, then he'll probably feel resentful, or be an emotionally detached parent to any potential offspring at best, because they do require a sacrifice, and there's nothing wrong with the fact that he doesn't want to make that sacrifice. The only answer is to break up, sadly. You have opposing goals that cannot be reconciled. My husband and I have both always wanted children, love them to death, but the truth is even one tiny speck of resentment can create a huge problem. Even if your partner were to come around to the idea, it would be so hard. You need someone who is full on excited to have kids. Someone who is eager to spend all their time parenting and who won't feel like they're losing themselves. Honestly, it does feel like that sometimes, but also I feel like I'm finding myself as a mom in wonderful ways, and I love to see my husband be the best dad ever. Find someone who can't wait to be an awesome dad. Law of the jungle. Fail to inseminate equates to cheating with the male who will inseminate. For me, it would be a deal breaker if my boyfriend didn't want to have kids just because of how important it is for me. You have to ask yourself, is this a deal breaker for you? Are you willing to go through life without having kids? Is that a sacrifice you're willing to make? Will you be happy without kids? Then make a decision based on that. It's a sucky situation, but it's a choice that has to be made, especially if he's not willing to change his mind. This is something that, in every relationship, is a huge deal breaker. I was broken up with because I am unable to have kids. My ex and I were both in our late 20s, dating for about a year, and many of our friends were getting married or having babies. At this point in our relationship, we started talking about the future. I found out the year before that I am unable to have children, and this was new information that I disclosed to him. Him, being from a huge family, was distraught since he always pictured himself having kids too. In the end, he broke up with me because for him this was a deal breaker. You both have to talk about it and see if this is something negotiable between the two of you. Some people really want kids in their life and others are okay either way. I'm in the same boat right now. We've been together for 5 years and we are only 22. We did 4 years long distance in college and he brought this conversation up yesterday. There are no issues in our relationship at all. I'm so happy, but I think this is the end and I don't know what to do. Absolutely no compromise. You'll end up a single parent with no visitation if you continue. CF people do not want their lives taken over by children. He will resent you if you force kids on him. Like full-on hate you for ruining his life. If that's what you want, go for it. I've been with my girlfriend for 5 years. We plan to have children. If one of us didn't, the relationship would be over. You can't change someone's opinion on wanting or not wanting children. I think it may be time to move on here. There is no compromise on this. This is one of the fundamental compatibilities necessary for a happy relationship. You need to decide whether this is a deal breaker or not. And then act on that. Not that you have to break up right away, but at least to let boyfriend know you see no future with him. This isn't something you can compromise on. No matter the end result, one of you will always resent the other. You say you have never reached a conclusion, but you have. It's just a conclusion that neither one of you want to follow through, which is breaking up. He doesn't want kids. He has made up his mind. You want kids, you also have made up your mind. It seems like you're both hoping the other person is going to change their mind. That's not going to happen. You both need to have the hard conversation that you both have different life goals and break up. As someone who has a dad that didn't want kids and a mom that wanted kids, this is a deal-break situation. Don't create a compromise because someone will feel disappointed. My dad never wanted to be a fatherly figure and put in the bare minimum effort for the role. Some dads want to be dads and play the role great, and some don't, and it does play a role of childhood development and views on family. So I think you should really evaluate the relationship as a whole because kids are often seen as a deal breaker for a good reason. I was with my ex for 8 years. I wasn't 100% sure I wanted them but for sure did want to foster. He eventually agreed to that but rescinded. We broke up and he got a vasectomy. I am grateful I did that as he would have been terrible with kids. 3.5 years later I'm married. Kids aren't on horizon yet as I went back to school, but he 100% wants them and is open to pregnancy, adopting or fostering. It truly is a much better partnership as we're on the same page. A child is better off being raised by people who want children instead of one or both that don't want children. If you really want kids in the future, you should look for someone who wants the same. You can't change your BF's mind and you can't force him to be a father. He made up his mind and you should respect his choice. Yikes, you haven't talked this to conclusion for 3 years and you're 32 now. My only advice is to break up ASAP, so that you can get back into the dating game ASAP. I'd also tell you to seek counseling because there is frankly a very real risk of you ending up permanently childless, biologically at least. Is fostering something you'd consider? That's a great alternative, I think. There are many kids out there who need a home. I'm gonna tell you something about having kids. It's hard. It's a lot of work. A person could easily lose themselves when they become a parent, but you know what? If you work hard to maintain your primary relationship, you can actually do it. I have 2 teenagers and my husband and I have worked hard since they were born to always put our relationship first. This has had an awesome side effect. Whenever I get just 24 hours away from my kids, the child-free person from 2002 comes to the surface. It's cool to live there for a while and know I can do it, but I always love coming back to reality. And I always look forward to the next time we can escape together and be as we used to be. We will be married for 20 years in 9 days. He still makes me weak in the knees. I mean, he's 100% wrong about what he thinks having a kid is going to be like, but that doesn't mean he's wrong to not want them. Break up. There's no way around a disagreement this fundamental. One of you will end up unhappy for the rest of your life if you stay together. I don't think there is anything more difficult in life than raising a kid. I feel compelled to ask you if you've actually spent a considerable amount of time babysitting. For me it's terrible. I don't think I could do a newborn kid or any kid for that matter under the age of 10 or so. Maybe speak about adopting if this is really important to you. Edit. Adopting will give your husband the opportunity to skip the infant stage, which may make him open to having kids. Obviously this comes with its own challenges which you need to be okay with as well, but it may be a compromise to keep the relationship going. He's going to resent you. He has already expressed how he feels about it. Don't think that you can change him. Save both yourselves the heartache. If he really wants to be with you, he'll come around. But some people just don't want kids, it is what it is. My husband, then boyfriend, resented me for quite some time for keeping our first child because we were not financially stable or ready to be parents. I was 22, and he was 26 at that time. We went through some rough patches, but after some maturing and getting our shit together, we are having our second child in a couple of months. We're now 31 and 35. Can people change after having a child? Yes, but don't count on it. Whatever y'all decide, I wish you both the best of luck. Poke a hole in your condoms or stop taking BC. You're most likely not going to compromise on kids. This is the path to resentment, as having kids is a big obligation that requires a lot of energy from both partners. Emo, his views are selfish, but whatever. This is usually a deal breaker for couples. You aren't gonna be able to have kids soon. You're old as fuck.